Let's start this one. It is more shower thoughts.
So I made this video on the English language last year. I double checked, and yep, it's still weird. Like, when you scratch something out of your notes, you're just noting to yourself that that note no longer needs to be noted. And like, why do horrible and horrific mean the same thing, but terrible and terrific mean the opposite? To make matters worse, the phrase "this blows" and "this sucks" are both opposite and identical at the same time. A lot of our phrases don't even make that much sense to begin with. Slow and steady wins the race works for a lot of things actually, but the one thing it doesn't actually work in is in an actual race.
I think the tortoise and the hare would beg to differ on that one. Shout out to Aesop's fable.
Being nice with someone is mostly a bad thing, but breaking the ice is usually a good thing? People usually put "gone but not forgotten" on their tombstones, but for most people, after like 3 or 4 generations, that's really just not true at all. If anything is possible, then isn't it possible that some things are impossible?
Yeah.
In the same way, I guess, when people say we're not perfect, doesn't that make us perfect at not being perfect? I'm just gonna confuse myself if I keep going. Why do we have fingertips but not toe tips? Like we can tiptoe but we can't finger tip? You also don't really know how the word red is red, unless it's red. And the more I light my
Context
lighter,
clues.
the lighter my lighter gets until it's too light to light. The word separate is written all together, but the words altogether are written separately. Extraordinary and extraordinary are antonyms. You know, it's crazy what a single space can do. But remember, every single time you press the spacebar, there are 6 million other people pressing it at the same exact time as you are. Speaking of space, in the last Shower Thoughts video, I mentioned reality television. I double checked this too, and yeah, it still sucks. But don't you think a really good show would be flying flat earthers into space and watching them react to it? Sure, it'd be expensive now, but in like 20 years, maybe not so much.
I have this random thought about reality television. It's actually something I consider way more than is usual for someone who doesn't watch reality television. But I think that a draw to it, not the only draw because there are surely so many factors of why somebody would want to watch that, but a draw is that mindless escapism element. And that's how I think shows like Real World, Big Brother, what's this one big in the UK? Love Island, Isla de las Tentaciones become so popular is because they're real people. So that makes it immersive. And you can judge them, you're watching them live their life in a situation that you would probably never be in yourself, while also disconnecting from your own life and being entertained. But then on the other side of that, these people represent the culture that they're from, so it becomes this social commentary. Like I'm sure if we watched an episode of what's an older reality show? Real World is older than me, so it must be in its late 20s, maybe even in its 30s. But if we watched an episode of The Real World, like season 1 or 2, I'm sure that we could clock so many differences in the language usage, in their clothing styles, in what is socially accepted to say and how to behave. It's like a little time capsule. Back in the day, I read this book called Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs, which I surely just chose because I liked the title. But it ended up being this collection of essays, and one of the essays was on the real world. I don't remember who wrote that. I'm going to find it for you, and I'll link it in the description.
If you made it to space, congratulations. You're casually floating around in the void. Now if you just randomly started peeing, you would actually cause an acceleration. It'd work the same way that a rocket does. This wouldn't work if you're dehydrated though. Drink your water. But even then, we don't buy water, we rent it. We use it, then return it, it's cleaned, and then sold back to you again. Life is crazy. In other water-related news, fire trucks are just water trucks. You know, shout out to water. Through condensation and precipitation, for almost 4 billion years, it's been traveling all around and throughout the planet, only to end up in my shower. You know the deal by now. These are shower thoughts.
That was an exceptionally long intro.
Things have changed a lot over the course of history. There are people alive in their 90s that were born before the world's population hit 2 billion. When the world's oldest person, Kane Tanaka, was born 117 years ago, the global population was just 1.6 billion. In just one person's life, we've gone from 1.6 to 8 billion. Countries are constantly changing. The majority of superpower countries in the world have been around for thousands of years, and most of the cities in the world are probably older than the countries they're in. If you're 25, you've been alive for over 10% of the United States' history. That's kind of insane when you think about the position the country has gone through over the past 250 years. The good, the bad, and even the ugly. Okay, maybe a lot of ugly. Anyway, they say it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill, but I've been alive for way more than 10,000 hours, and I've yet to master the skill of life. When you're a kid...
That 10,000 hour rule, I don't know if Malcolm Gladwell created it, or if he just referenced it in his book, Outliers, it was. But it's hard to know if that's real, because although it is used often, you can find just as many articles and people claiming to debunk it. It's a toughie. Let me know what you think about that. I do believe that repetition leads to mastery, but then at the same time, if you do something incorrectly for 10,000 hours, you're not going to be a master by the end of it. If you've done something intentionally for 10,000 hours, leave your thoughts.
You think adults somehow know everything and have their lives together. But once you grow up, you realize that many people genuinely have absolutely no clue what they're doing sometimes. Yes. Also, when growing up, you realize how absurd daily life is. We paid the zoo to look at a bunch of stolen property, most of us have dead bodies in our freezers, and your lap only really exists when you're sitting. When you stand up, it just becomes your legs again. I don't make the rules, okay? Life is frustrating, and something that's been frustrating me lately more than usual is that we have wireless chargers that are actually more restricting than just normal wired chargers. It's fine though, no one is texting me anyway. Most of the time, having the last word in an argument means you've won, but if that argument is over text, getting left on red kinda feels like you've lost. Oh, and by the way, if you didn't know, your fingers don't have muscles in them. Whenever you move your fingers, your palm and forearm are doing 99% of the work.
Do you guys leave your read receipts on? I have those turned off. And I almost never take my phone off of do not disturb mode. If you have an iPhone, you know what I mean.
Your handwriting is actually just your hand's accent, so I guess slurring your words when you speak is just talking in cursive. Remember though, you don't get paid on how hard you work. You get paid on how hard you are to replace. Life isn't fair, but at least we're trying, right? Birth certificates are usually the first participation award people get in life. It's kind of weird welcoming a child into the world, since they've already been here as long as everything else has, just in a different form of matter. I guess it's just like celebrating the temporary collection of atoms that make you, you. Wow, I think I actually just described birthdays, what? Death certificates are pretty much like saying thanks for playing. We pass the anniversary of our death every year without knowing. Who knows, it could even be today. Death is a movie. Nightmares are just the trailers. They say that life flashes before your eyes when you die, so what if every time you blink, you're actually just taking screenshots to show yourself before you die? The last person in your friend group will go to all of your funerals, but no one will go to theirs.
Well,
don't feel sad
their
though.
Family.
This just means that they're the last friend to hatch their skeleton. Most video games prevent you from sleeping when danger is nearby. Think about that the next time you can't fall asleep at night for no reason. Remember everyone, if you can't sleep, just know that if you lay down with enough force, you'll fall asleep instantly. Are you scared of heights? A lot of people are, and miss out on things like parachuting. But there's no reason to worry. If your parachute doesn't open, you have the rest of your life to fix it. You're not afraid of falling, you're just afraid of hitting the ground. You don't really know that you've forgotten something until you can't remember it. Think about how many things you've actually forgotten. Oh, wait, you can't. But speaking of forgetting things, the center of gravity is the letter V, and it's pointing down. And, I couldn't fix that parachute. You're a murderer, you know that, right? You've murdered trillions of bacteria in the shower. Fun fact, cannibalism can solve both the issues of overpopulation and world hunger at the same time. Two birds with one stone. Alright, so plastic dinosaurs are made of plastic, and plastic is made of oil, and oil comes from fossil fuels, from actual dinosaurs. So technically, dinosaurs never left, we're just turning them into plastic. We've always been told that an asteroid killed the dinosaurs, but what if the asteroid was just a spaceship, and we're the aliens? Take Me to Your Leader is just the alien version of Let Me Speak to Your Manager. For some reason, we've been pretty much branding aliens as Karens all along.
Well, the thing is, we are alien to the aliens, right? Alien just being foreign in this case, but lately I've been thinking about how I feel bad for some of the people named Karen, because the name has just become a euphemism for, to say it nicely, difficult person. But not all Karens fit that description, right? Not all Karens are Karens. So, I don't know. I'd like to see them reclaim the name. Some justice for the kind Karens.
We've been looking for extraterrestrial life for decades, but we can't really find anything. Most of us just completely dismiss UFO abduction stories because, well, they're usually insane and made up. An animal who was captured from the wild and studied by human biologists would probably tell the same story. Because of this, life is seen as rare. But think about it. The rarest animals on Earth might not actually be rare. They might just be really good at hiding from us. It's the same principle. Now that I mention it, the principle of YouTube itself is interesting to say the least. It feels like whoever you're watching is talking directly to you and you never think anything of it. But in reality, I'm here in my room by myself, talking to myself. I'm lonely.
I never not think about that. Never not. It's a double negative. I often think about that. How I'm just in a room looking at a small camera lens that I don't even try to look directly into most of the time. Speaking to no one in particular because I don't know you specifically, but then sometimes you guys will write me on Instagram and you tell me your screen name and I think, oh, that's who that is. Putting a face to the name is so odd to me. But then I try not to think about this too deeply because it quickly just goes downhill, leads me to existential thoughts. And then I don't upload for a few days because, I don't know, I get conscious of how many people are watching. So that's what I'm going to think about for the rest of today.
Everyone loves to comment first like they're proving something. But if you really want to be special, being last is a lot more impressive. I can understand it though. The first person to do anything is usually the one that's remembered for it. But since we don't remember pretty much anything from when we were babies, can you even remember the first time you started gaining consciousness? Maybe that's exactly what our first memory really is. You really have zero idea of when you were born. You just take everyone else's word for it. Fruit, just like humans, have belly buttons where they were plucked from, and your belly button is technically just your old mouth. So now that I think about it, the fruit we grow is essentially eating away at the sun every single day, and we eat that fruit. So in a sense, the sun doesn't really taste that bad. I know, that can be a lot to take in, so just relax for a second. But wait, if you're laying on an open field, that kind of makes the entire earth your backpack, so you're pretty much carrying the weight of the world. People usually say things like, I'm 6 feet tall, but that's only when you're standing. If you're laying down, you're 6 feet long, so technically, tall people sleep longer. When you hug someone, so like once a year for most of us, they're the closest person in front of you, but at the same time, they're also the furthest person on Earth behind you. I know, it's sad. But hey, you've survived 100% of the things you've ever encountered in life. You're undefeated.
Yeah.
Every person you know knows a different version of you. It's like you're a video game and everyone you know is at different save points. The only thing is, you're the only one who can finish it. But remember, the person you see in the mirror and the voice you hear in your own head is not the same person that the rest of the world sees and hears. The only person who truly knows you is yourself, and you don't even know yourself that well. You've forgotten most days of your life, just as everyone else has, and you'll continue to forget. So for now, for the time being, even if the world is falling apart, just try and remember the good. And by the way, the letter W definitely starts with a D.
W. Okay, loves me. A wholesome ending like that. Okay. Thank you for sending this in. This was another one from the channel called Aperture. You'll find it linked in the description. He has a lot of thought experiment style videos. I really like the channel and I just really like his voice. It's so soothing. So yeah, check out his channel, see if there are any more videos that interest you. I actually don't have any shower thoughts at the top of my head right now. If I think of one, I'll put it in the description, but write your shower thoughts down below. As always with these, there are some that I find more interesting than others, but it's always fun. So for a literary recommendation, I'm going to add Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, so you can go over the 10,000 hour rule and come to your own conclusions and then get back to me. What was the other one we mentioned? Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs. I'll find the author, put that down below. You know who else writes in essay format sometimes who I really enjoy is David Foster Wallace. Consider the Lobster is his book that is in essay form. But my favorite of his is called Infinite Jest. I'm going to put both of those down below. I really like David Foster Wallace as an author. And I also like some of his speeches. Actually, we could probably watch some of his speeches on the channel. But if you have any books from an author who writes in essay form, drop the name down below. And that's really all from me. So leave your thoughts on any of this, and just thank you for watching.